Hi guys, welcome to the Star Virtual Property Show. I'm Mr. Money, and today in this workshop we are going to talk about, is this the right time to buy property? Yes, property, that's something that all of us Malaysians love to have. Because being Asian, somehow we are born with this mindset that we must own at least one property in our lifetime. I believe many of you out there also think the same like me. I myself is not too far off, it's just that I like to have a little bit more than one. Yeah, why? Because one to stay and then a few others to invest and collect rental, or maybe even sell it off one day and make some returns. Today, we're going to talk about whether is 2024 a right time. Now, first, let's look at the big market itself. Firstly, I think there are some factors in the market that's going to encourage the property market growth. Firstly, let's talk about LRT itself. There's the reinstatement of a few stations in Klang Valley. You know, those of you, if you are driving at the NKVE there, you will probably start seeing some LRT stations building, namely near Tropicana area. That's going to be extended all the way to Klang area. We are talking about Raja Muda, Tamasha, Bukit Raja, and Bandar Botanic. So there's going to be this extension of the LRT3 line, right? So we can expect around those areas there's going to be a multiplication effect where houses surrounding those areas likely see an increase in price. And not just that, there will be more development activities going around in those neighborhoods within that radius, right? Now, second thing, we can see the government is also trying to encourage property purchases. For one, there's going to be a full exemption on stamp duty for first-time house buyer for houses that are 500,000 and below until the end of 2025. So this will encourage home ownerships in Malaysia. And second thing is this additional 1 billion set for a guarantee fund to incentivize established developer to complete stalled housing project. One more thing also, recently I read a report that said that property value has been going up, and Klang Valley itself, when we are talking about rental rate, we are expecting an increase of at least 10%. And if you actually have friends who are renting houses, or probably you are renting houses, you are probably starting to see that many of these landlords are starting to increase their rental. In terms of the interest rate environment, then we can see in the US it's already maintained at the same level. Malaysia as well is maintained at 3%. Many are saying that eventually US will drop their interest rate. It's just a matter of time. And when that happens, Malaysia could likely follow the footsteps. This means lower interest rate, cheaper loans, and that could boost the property market as well. So with all these macroeconomic factors around, we can say that it could be potentially a good time to get into the property market. However, there's one question that a lot of people ask me. If I'm thinking about buying a home for my family, is this a good time? My answer to that is it's always a good time regardless of the market. Because if you're looking for a home, you need a house to stay. So it's regardless of whether market environment is good or bad. The only question that you have to ask yourself is whether can you afford to own a home to stay. But if you're looking at to just invest property to flip, or whatnot, then this kind of macro environment factor will play a much bigger role, right? So now we've talked about all these macro environment factor. Let us move into yourself at a personal level. Whether is it right time to buy property for you? So in order to assess whether is it a right time to buy property for you, there are 3 things that you need to know. Number 1, do you know what's your objective of purchasing a property? Is that crystal clear? Number 2, do you have enough money? Yes, cash flow. Can you pay for the down payment, upfront payment, and then the installment and so on? Number 3, do you have a safety buffer? So let's get down to these 3 points and discuss more about it. First thing, I always tell people this: when you buy a property, you need to be extremely clear what you want to do with the property. Are you buying it to stay, to flip, or are you buying it to rent? Because all these 3 have different strategy, alright? Very different in fact. For example, if you're buying a house to actually stay, the truth is, it really doesn't matter. The question is just when you walk into the house, are you happy with the house? Do you like the house? Are you going to enjoy it? Are you going to enjoy this living environment for the next 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, or 20 years? What's the plan in it? Are you planning to live there until retire? Or are you planning to live there until you get married, then you want to move out? See, all these kind of factors are different. So I would say that if you're looking for a house to stay, the number 1 thing you need to know is, do you like it and does it fit your plan? And because these two things are so personal, we will not go too in-depth into it. In fact, it's better off that you sit down and take out a piece of paper, list down what do you like about a house. It can be, it is near to the city center, it can be further away from city center, it can be, I like a lot of greeneries, it can be, I like concrete jungle, you know, all these kind of things. Like, list it all down, right? Then ultimately match it with your budget lah. I mean, I also would love to stay in the palace, right? But I don't have the ability to do so. So yeah, ultimately it still comes out yourself. Second thing, if you're looking for a property for flipping, which means that you want to buy it and then sell it later for a profit. Now, here is where, remember the earlier parts where we talk about all these macro environments? Yeah, those kind of things will play a big impact, because if interest rate is higher, it means the cost to take a loan is higher. Therefore, what happens is that when you buy a house, the cost incurred is higher, and when you sell it in the short period of time, since your loan in the early days you're paying mostly interest, not the principal, your profit won't be that much because interest rate is high. Yeah, so you just need to understand how to calculate this whole loan amortization thing and so on. Okay, yeah, then you will understand that it's not so simple. All right, so if you're buying to flip, these are sort of consideration. Now, buying to flip, you also need to know whether is this property going to be leasehold or freehold, because usually if it's a freehold land, the chances of it increasing in price, yeah, is actually higher. Leasehold, usually the increase in price will go up initially, but after a while it will kind of slow down a little bit. Let's put it this way, right? If let's say we are talking about leasehold land and freehold land, both in the same location, all the things are the same. The only variable is actually just the title, which is leasehold or freehold, all in the same place. What likely will happen is that you will see the freehold land has a higher capital appreciation, but leasehold have a slightly lesser capital appreciation. Chances are, I would say very, very high chance, right? If all things are the same, just the title difference, all right? Now, why? Because people have this concept that if you buy a freehold land, what happens is that you can own it for the rest of your life. But when you buy a leasehold land, the idea is that after 99 years, you need to renew the lease, so there could be some trouble. And we also have this idea that at 99 years, maybe government will take back the land, so maybe end up you don't get anything. Now, so these are some of the considerations that you need to have in place. The next thing is the location of the property. Now, if you're talking about a property, capital appreciation wise, yeah, you need to choose the right location. Think about it. If let's say that place is always at a very matured area already, what will happen is that the increase in price will be more slower. Although it's good, but it will be like, you know, like that lah, slowly go up lah, right, according to the market lah. But if let's say you are looking at a new place that suddenly boom up, right, where the activity is gonna increase significantly in just a short period of 2 years. Think of it like Puchong last time. There was this transition period where when we first started seeing more commercial activities happening in Puchong, then the price shoot up within the next 2 to 3 years. That's a huge capital gain in just a few years. Yeah, before it start like going in a normal linear fashion lah. Yeah, slow down a little bit. Why? Because maturity, everyone knows Puchong by now, right? So in the early days when people are still unconfirmed, yeah, that's where it happens. So now, this comes down to this particular question when you want to invest in a property for capital appreciation, is you need to be able to have that foresight to actually predict or to actually project and estimate whether this place is going to have a good capital increase in the near future. Now, this involves a lot of study and understanding of a particular location and the surrounding development, not just that particular development. One more thing is the type of property. When you look at the type of property, although it could be in the same location, but different types of property could fetch a different price. To give you a very simple example, think of Bangsa South area, right? That whole area there's a lot of expat right now because there's the building of the financial center there, that whole touch and go digital, everything, they're all there, right? All these fintech companies, they are all there. And many of them come as expat as well. Then in order to live nearby there, they will need to look for apartments. But we know that there last time mostly is low-cost apartment. Subsequently, there were more higher-end apartment. Later, there was a developer that went in that built a very luxurious development that even has a private lift directly to its home. Yeah, we did a video on that, right? Yeah, very, very beautiful place. And very quickly, because that's the only type of property that's like that's very exclusive, their price shot up like crazy. Why? Because there's no similar property within that neighborhood. We are not talking about places in Mont Kiara, right, where there's so many same type of property, then you can choose. But this area, there's only one particular property that has this kind of amenities, that is this kind of type, right? So that makes it exclusive and that makes it rare. Therefore, the supply is less in this place and the demand just somehow is rising because next door also is a mid-valley lah. Do understand that, right? So there's demand coming in, but supply is only that one particular building that has that. So therefore, the property price increase becomes much more significant. So if you're looking at capital appreciation, what you want to do is also to study the remaining areas of this particular location to understand what the other types of property that have been developing. Will there be a future competition? And if let's say there's a future competition to your type of unit, what are we looking at? These are the questions that you have to ask. And finally, the last thing is actually for rental returns, right? If you are investing a property for rental returns, one of the things that you have to look at is definitely population, right? Comparing to buying and flipping is actually not too far different, but suddenly when it comes to renting it out, you want to pay more attention to the commercial activity nearby, the offices and so on. Why is it so? Because people will only rent a place for convenience most of the time. Most of the time, right? If today you are working in KL, you want to rent a place to stay so that it's easier for you to go to work, you will probably rent it somewhere near a LRT or MRT station. You'll probably rent it somewhere near to your home. You'll probably rent it somewhere where it's convenient for you to come down and buy stuff. So convenience is the number one thing that you need to think about. So when you want to buy a house to think about rental, the first thing that you have to ask yourself is, will you want to stay in this place? And under what condition will you want to stay in this place? Is it livable? Is it nice? So that is some of the main consideration you think about. And traditionally, we do know that apartments or condominiums generally fetch a higher rental return compared to a landed property. So these are some of the factors to think about and consider. Second thing, let's talk about money, which falls exactly my name, Mr. Money, right? So let's talk about whether can you afford a property in 2024. Depending on yourself, and your strategy. First, you need to understand how are you going to calculate how much money you need to actually spend when you buy a property. If you're talking about a sub-sale or most of the property out there, generally you will need 10% upfront payment for deposit, and then another about 5%, actually about 3 to 5% somewhere there, to actually set aside for stamp duty lah, for transfer of title lah, all the blah 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 blah, legal fee lah, and so on lah, valuation fee, all these kind of things, right? All the things. So add up together is about 15%. So if you're looking at a property about 1 million, you need to have 150,000 upfront cash. And that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people don't like to buy sub-sale or either properties that are too expensive. Like some developers will actually insist that you pay a 10%. Why? Because they want to know that you are financially capable. And that's their way of filtering the people who are coming in. Okay, so think about it. If today I have a new development, right, and I actually impose to say that you have to pay 10% regardless. Why do I do that? So that the people who are going to move in and own the property are likely people with money. Because if let's say I don't take the down payment 10%, right, you may just waive it off. Actually, you may not have money at all, you're just taking a loan to buy this house. So therefore, this environment is not that exclusive. So you will notice that exclusive development, luxury high-end development, will tend to impose this to ask you for 10% of down payment. Now, so this is the first thing that you need. If you do not have that, then it's better to look for properties with zero down payment. Okay, if you're looking at a sub-sale, I know there are many tricks in the market, such as marking it up and so on, where you can get zero down payment as well. It's all up to you, right? How you want to play with it. Now, however, these are some of the costs that's definitely needed. Secondly, is the installment that is that you need to pay, right? So think about it. A property that's 1 million ringgit, generally the installment you need to fork out every month for a 35 years loan, you are talking about 4,000 ringgit or so on, 4,000, 4,005 depending on interest rate and so on. So 4,000 or 4,005. So this is the amount that you need to pay out every month. You're not renting this property out. You really want to consider whether you can afford the installment or not. And this is a general rule of thumb. You should not be paying more than 50% of your income, to installment. Let's say you are earning 8,000 ringgit. The maximum installment you should be paying for house, car, or anything should be 4,000 ringgit. Nothing more than that. So if you are buying a property to stay, please consider that. If you are buying a $1 million property, make sure your income is about 8,800 to 900, because don't forget you need to minus all your EPF, everything off. So ultimately it's your take-home income that matters, right? So with the take-home income, make sure your take-home got more than 8,000 ringgit, only you buy a 1 million ringgit property, alright? If not, it's gonna be quite uncomfortable for you because you're only left with 4,000 ringgit to survive. Think about it. So if let's say you eat up to 80%, you're only left with 2,000 ringgit. Takkan you live in a 1.2 million house, your monthly expenses is only 1,000 ringgit. Cannot be, right? It's so uncomfortable. So don't be crazy. Think about whether can you afford it or not. Now, it's a whole different game if let's say you're talking about renting it out. Yeah, I know people are willing to take a lot more risk when they're renting out property. Because why? The tenant is going to pay for my installment. So nothing to worry about, lor. That's what they think, right? Nothing to worry about. However, you also want to take note, right? And be careful about days that people don't rent your property, because there will be moments where suddenly a tenant walks off, or suddenly there's a period where you couldn't get a rental for 3 months or 4 months. Then you need to fork it out yourself. So you have to ask yourself, can you afford to be able to stomach that? Finally, on top of that, regardless of whether you're buying a property to rent out, to flip or to stay yourself, there's another cost that you need to bear in mind is maintenance cost. Property will wear and tear one, don't forget. Yeah, even the furniture inside will wear and tear. And also don't forget, right, you're going to furnish the house, going to renovate the house, and renovation will cost you anywhere in between 30,000 all the way to 100 over, or even millions of ringgits, right? Depending on how you want to renovate the house lah. So you also need to prepare money for the renovation part. Then after that, maintenance. And maintenance is going to be a lifelong thing. Yeah, it's going to keep incurring every year, a few hundred to a few thousand every year, depending on who stays there and how is it being taken care of. So money, make sure you take care of all that. Now, one tip, if you're renting out your house, remember do this one thing. Increase the rental rate every year, because by increasing the rental rate every year, you will actually be able to increase the price of the property as well. Let's think about it, right? When people want to buy a property one day, if today you want to buy a property to invest, and you look at the guy's rental rate, from last time 10 years until today, still the same rate. How do you think about this property? Do you think it's a great property to invest in? You'll probably ask yourself, right? Like that. But if let's say today you want to buy a property and this guy show you the rental record from the last 5 years until now, rental has increased by 50%. Do you think this is a great property to buy? Naturally, you're more confident to pull the trigger and buy this property for investment, right? So same concept, right? Increase the rental rate. Sorry to you guys out there who are renting property that I'm saying this, but yeah. That's just how the world works. So make sure you earn enough money to actually buy a house of your own to stay. Lastly, after all that, we talked about purpose, we talked about money, and the last thing I want to remind everyone is, again, emergency. Always remember, when it comes to property, it's a very cash-intensive game. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people going into the property investment field with no backup, with no emergency saving. They thought that they can have property as their everything and therefore have very, very, very little cash. The truth is, it gets a lot of people into trouble. You must remember, property is a very illiquid asset. It's hard to sell immediately, okay? You can't get the money immediately. Even if you can sell it today, to do all the paperwork and everything, it will take you about 3 months before you can get the cash. Yeah, and I've seen people get stuck in cash flow and get into trouble just because of that. Not that they have no money, but they have no liquidity. Yeah, so always remember, make sure when you buy a property, you must have liquidity. And as you accumulate property, you must have some reserve for liquidity, all right? Always keep cash. Yeah, always have an amount of cash. So with all these 3 points that I've shared with you, I hope it helps you to think about it, whether it's 2024 a right time to buy a property for yourself, because macro environment can tell you a lot of things, but ultimately it's still yourself. Are you ready to purchase a property? Also, if you have any question about property and investment, you can reach out to us via our Instagram, Mr. Money TV, or TikTok, or our YouTube channel. See you guys.